Chapter 1. My path of destiny in this world has come to an end, and I heard the sound of the cracked soul being broken, heard the sound of withered life dying. Oh, that's more like gray-blue. The sound of the wind blowing over the withered and yellow leaves all over the mountains and fields. Hey! But, even if my life is gone, my soul will die, to melt into the pure white emptiness, and will continue to seek a pathetic and beautiful fate, looking for a life that is as bright as animal blood. Transport. Yes, like a wisp of haggard gray-blue wind in the desolate, drifting endlessly on the Inner Mongolia Plateau, burning in the snow-white feather grass of the setting sun, in the Ergun River Nabu, on the cliff full of purple rocks, in the emerald green of the blue mist like a dream, in the birch forest, in the blue-black mountain peak split by lightning, on the wilderness covered with red leaves, to search hard for that destiny. Maybe searching is always futile, just like I have. After searching in vain for more than 20 years, I will continue to search. Decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, until the sun also sinks forever, falling into pure white emptiness, never to rise this millennium of drudgery. May turn the blood of my soul pale, but when will the sharp beauty of fate wither, and no longer sting my soul, make me get the peace above the world? Oh, time can crack hard rock in wind erosion, but why can't the charm of that fate be shattered? This is Before Dawn on April 12, 1965, Solomon. The living Buddha stands on a cliff in the Yinshan Mountains, the north of Ho-Ho side, preparing for his customary morning meditation from his plateau. Thoughts drifting through consciousness as desolate as the sky. The Yinshan Mountains are like the dried-up wreckage of a male fate in Liao. The vast and desolate southern part of the Inner Mongolia Plateau stretches thousands of miles from east to west. Lie. Against the steel blue sky background before the Ming Dynasty, the peaks of the Yinshan Mountains appear soothing bronze. The rocky and steep mountain is like a beautiful, the ancient Inner Mongolian warrior carved out by the red thunder and silver-white wind. The group of warriors, in savage and hard silence, bowed to the southwest, looking at Eurasia. On the south side of the Yinshan Mountains, on the cliff where even flying eagles have to look up, there stands a pagoda made of snowflake stone. That pagoda is like a wreath, a pure white flower resting on the parched male will. This Buddha. The pagoda is a mountain temple with a history of hundreds of years, Saratuzo, the burial place of the first generation of living Buddha. The smooth music of the pagoda body. The lines are like beautiful poetry, and the white color of the tower is reminiscent of. Think of a certain withering of innocence. The living Buddha Chao Luoming stood on the edge of the cliff, looking at the snow for a long time. White stupa. He is over 90 years old, with a thin face like. The wind-eroded stones in the Gobi Desert only have a hard and broken feeling, but no. There was an expression, not even an expression of old age, that seemed to be. Too long a time had completely wiped life from his countenance. Traces of life. In the shadows before dawn, the living Buddha Chao Luoming was deeply trapped. His eyes were dark gray, empty and lonely, like in the boundless snowfield, those eyes seemed to be a metaphor for a philosophical motto. Rich emotions over a long time, like silver snowflakes. After falling one after another, there is only a dark cloud left in the desolate life. The low-hanging lonely snowfield is gone. The living Buddha Chao Luoming stared silently at the stupa as if to make him. His dark gray eyes merged into the clear whiteness of the pagoda. That building. The pagoda is like the quiet wisdom of fallen leaves, carved out of the sky. A finely contoured fissure through which the earthly. The artistic conception beyond the sky, there is only a piece of pure white silence. An abundance of emptiness. The base of the pagoda is a square 9-level stone step, and the stone steps are embossed with the gorgeous waves, the lotus flowers falling from the sky, and the flowing stream. Clouds, many flying apsaras with serene and indulgent smiles, naked. showing a slightly raised belly and deep navel, or in the waves. Bathed in the rain, or dancing in the rain of falling flowers, or fly among the clouds. Despite their various postures, they seem to be in the extreme posture that almost breaks the slender waist. Both present a sense of temptation when the eroticism is overflowing, and they all exude a strong and the coquettish reproductive atmosphere makes the base of the stupa look white. The net tower body has a completely different mood. Perhaps, only by overcoming the temptation of lust can we understand the meaning of life. The emptiness of life can make the soul blend into the pure emptiness. Middle. Chao Luoming, living Buddha, slowly lowered his gaze, looking at the base of the stupa. On relief, thinking, my heart has long been burned by the fire of lust. Burning to pale ashes, oh yes, just that. This sudden fate was so blazing that the ashes could burning up again. The wind coming up from the bottom of the cliff is getting faster and faster, draping the dark red monk's robe on the skeleton-like withered body of Chao Luoming. In front of the pure white pagoda, the mood danced chaotically, like a flame. The dry red blood burned in pure nothingness, a piece of blood that has gone through 100 years of wind. Dust of blood. Chao Luoming's father was a troubadour, and he was in it all his life, wandering around on the Mongolian plateau, singing Genghis Khan to the herdsmen. A generational hero story. The first memory of Chao Luoming's life is he was held in his mother's arms, sitting in a big cart pulled by oxen. Roaming on the prairie, his father rode an old horse and followed behind the big cart. When Chao Luoming was born, his father was almost 50 years old, and mother is in the cardamom age. He remembered that his father's dusty. The face is like a stone burned by wildfire. It is dark purple, gray-blue. His eyes remind one of a desolate horizon. However, whenever the father sit on your knees by the bonfire, play the motor in, and start singing for the shepherds. At that time, his eyes will suddenly become full of gorgeous looks, just like the wildflower shakes the horizon. Chao Luoming will never forget, Father. Whenever I sing my dear, I always start like this, the purple setting sun. Longevity Sky tells the story of ancient Mongolian warriors without dust. The wind, blow the story again through the green birch forest, into my heart. A sad heart. The father's voice is bleak and masculine. Chao Luoming felt that it seemed to be burnt to dark red by the sunset. The colorful cliffs are singing, while the sad and dignified Matukin. The sound seemed to be the echo from the distant wilderness. Chao Luoming's mother was the daughter of a prince. She is 16. That year, after hearing the singing of Chao Luoming's father, along with this, a grizzled minstrel elopes like a beautiful. With the sad wind of late autumn, the beautiful spring is drifting towards the blood-stained red leaves. Falling sky. Chao Luoming could no longer remember what his mother looked like. I just remember that when I was wandering on the grassland in a big wheel cart, my mother. A pair of black jewel-like crystal eyes, flowing with gorgeous light waves, from staring into the distance morning and night. At that time, his young mind was. I am puzzled by this. He didn't know what attracted his mother, because, for, on that desolate horizon, he sees nothing but tumultuous weeds, cracked rocks, and gray clouds. 1. Once, he suddenly felt that maybe it was because his father's eyes were always at the same time. The desolate horizon is so alike, the mother fell in love with the father. However, he didn't know that what his mother loved was the desolate and distant sky. The side, or his father's eyes. When Chao Luoming was 10 years old, his father died while singing. Up. When singing that day, the troubadour, as usual, poured a bowl of strong wine with a color like blue and white flames poured into his mouth, sipping. Moisten his thirsty throat. Perhaps it is for this reason that the style of burning blue and white flames is the only way to make people feel depressed when singing. Drunken passion. As he poured the last bowl of spirits into his mouth, Then, his body suddenly shook violently, and he stood up in pain. Straightened, and then, a stream of black and purple blood gushed from between his tightly closed lips. Out. At that moment, Chao Luoming was shocked to find that his father's. The eyes suddenly flashed with a brilliant look that had never been seen before, just like. The purple sunset was torn by the furious wind when his body slowed. When going backward and downwards, the look in the eyes is like burnt ash. Jin's dream gradually became dim, disappearing in the bronze-colored sorrow. In mourning, the shepherds built a fire of fragrant pine for the minstrel. Funeral altar. When the scarlet flame rises from the pyre, when the body of the troubadour, placed on the cremation table, gradually turned into a burning. When the purple wind blows, Chao Luoming's eyes are suddenly filled with blue. The shadow of tears was blinded. He turned his blank eyes to his mother. But I found that there were no tears or sadness in my mother's eyes. There is only a tenderness like a light blue morning mist, and that reflected in the mother. The fire in the eyes is like a heroic dancer dancing in beautiful tenderness. Ghost. After the death of the father, the mother returned to the Ergun River with Chao Luoming. On the side, a yurt was set up on the cliff. Easy on the prairie. It is easy to live, as long as there is a place where weeds grow, people can live. Chao Luoming felt that his mother had changed, her eyes had become dry, and her face had changed. Got haggard. She used to stand on a hill covered with red sage. On the hill, looking far into the distance for a long time, even on a day when a black storm is blowing. The same is true in Zili. When Chao Luoming was 15 years old, one evening, in the middle, the mother lit a bonfire on the bank of the Ergun River. Fire, then, led him to sit by the campfire. Mother silently drinking. He drank a lot of wine, the first time he saw his mother drink so much wine. Spirits. The mother's face was filled with a seductive blush, her eyes. Although there is still a desolate expression engraved in it, it has become like a black treasure again. Crystal clear as a stone. Later, the mother began to speak, and she was a little. The hoarse, fiery, and dreamlike tone has made Chao Luoming so far unforgettable. It's been 5 years since your father left me, a real man. People are like him, they die all at once, without struggle. Without moaning, like a rock struck by lightning, it cracks all of a sudden. Opened, broken, when we Mongols had our own heroes. Era, but that was a long, long time ago. Rome of Mongolia. Yahoo has fallen like a meteor, and the blue sky of the grassland has also withered. Up. Now, men can only die of drunkenness, old age, or disease. To live is to rot slowly. Hey, a woman's life is. It's even more desolate. Without a heroic man, a woman will soon dry up. And soon grow old and ugly. The beauty of a woman is only in. Only a hero's heart can become an invincible flower. It's still a small. When I was a girl, I dreamed that I could live in Genghis Khan's. In the age of heroes, the dream is to have handsome and resolute warriors with leopard-like eyes on me grooming him, dreaming of a man of heroes. The bloodstained sword engraved my flowery face on his heart, even if his heart was as cold as a stone. Hey, but I can only hope. Looking at the desolate horizon, looking forward to groups of Mongolian warriors flashing like thunder and lightning. Dark clouds pour from below the horizon. I know it's impossible. I can, but only when I look at the distant horizon can my heart find peace and anticipation. Every time I see the boundless grass waves blown by the wind, moving, shining silver-gray light rushing into the distance, my heart, it always seems to have grown the wings of a wild dove. Later, I met you. Dad, just follow him, wander around with him, every day. See new horizons. And, I also know, only when he groans. Only in the story sung can we find the age of heroes that has withered for a long time. Can touch the heart of a real man who is burning like fire, oh, me and you. Abba's been apart for so long I can hear his ghost in the storm. Calling to me, I can see his eyes in the gray mist on the horizon. Look at me. Look, the sunset in the west is as red as blood. Ah, the storm is coming again tomorrow. You are 15 years old and you are a man. You don't need me to take care of you anymore. You should go on your way. Remember, my child, no matter how you live, don't be like weeds, slowly drying up in one place. In the early morning of the next day, Chow Luoming was awakened by a violent storm. He heard, amidst the mighty ghostly howls of the storm, suddenly, a painful yet beautiful and charming cry swayed and fluttered. He hit. When I opened the wooden door of the yurt, it was immediately knocked down by the strong wind. At this time, behold, a pale and blinding flame in the swirling dust, floating quickly to the depths of the wasteland, soon torn apart by the howling wind. And the torn flames are like sheets of frantic crimson. The blood mist flickered in the sand and dust, rose upwards, and finally disappeared, lost on top of the turbulent storm. After the storm passed, the grassland became as silent as a cemetery. The sky was a forlorn gray-white. A neighbor told Chow Luo Ming, when the storm was just blowing, he saw that Kalaman's mother, dressed in wedding attire, pouring a bucket of ghee over himself, then. Afterward, he lit the skirt of his long skirt, jumped onto the horse's back, and shouted loudly, "Rush into the storm." Maybe inherited a turbulent heart from the life of his parents, Years later, Chow Luoming packed his bags and left the Urguna River. He would go into the world told in the tales his father sang, to find traces of the Mongolian heroic epic centuries ago, blown by the mighty north wind blowing from the depths of the Mongolian Plateau. Chow Luoming crossed the desert Gobi, following the footprints of wild sheep and snow leopards. Embarked on the Qinghai Plateau. This silent plateau rising above the clouds. In the sky, there floats an ancient and barbaric mystery far away from the world. Mood. The majestic Himalayan snow-capped peaks are bathed in low-hanging blue. In the sky, as if condensed in the mysterious atmosphere, the bright, steep meditation. When Chow Luoming saw the jade-like crystals under the snow-capped mountains, when looking at the pure pagoda, a sense of tranquility is like a pure white charm. It diffused in his mind, making him almost want to make his life silently melted into that pure white charm. Just his father. The iron hooves of the war horses in the heroic epic sung crushed the peaceful, a quiet sense of belonging, just from the ancient Mongolian warriors who were split by a sharp sword. The poppy-colored blood gushing out of his chest wiped away that pure white charm. Confused. When Chow Luoming left Qinghai, he did not look back at the beautiful pagoda. Once, he worried that if he looked at the pagoda again, what he was looking for in his heart would be the fire of desire in the ruins of the Mongolian heroic epic will be in the quiet and white, extinguished forever in the charm. Chow Luoming came to India through the mountain pass of the Himalayas. Plain. One evening he reached the banks of the industry purple night. Xia hangs down on the wide river, making the silver-gray river water appear the dignified crimson, as if the blood of the setting sun dyed the river red. Countless half-naked Hindus are bathing in the river. Follow India. The teachings of the teachings, bathing in this sacred river, and life can be obtained through purification. However, Chow Luoming felt that the group was soaked in dark red. The gray and white body in the river water seems to take the ruby color of the setting sun. Blood-stained. Although Chow Luoming's body was covered with wind and dust. However, a strong sense of disgust caused him to leave without a bath. Indian River. At that time, he felt that only people want to create heroic history. When the blood of sacrifices made in poems dyes the river red, their lives will be restored to purification. Only when life is bathed in its blood can it be purify into a noble and holy existence. Chow Luoming followed the footsteps of the stories sung by his father and came to the southernmost tip of the Indian subcontinent. The minstrel once sang this. Such a story, a team of Mongolian cavalry rushed to the Indian Ocean. After the shore, distraught because he lost the room to continue running. So they drank and sang to the north for days and nights. A desolate song of homesickness, and then, brandishing a sword in the twilight. Roaring like a wounded beast, the horse jumped off the cliff and jumped into the Indian Ocean. Cyan blue waves. Chow Luoming stood on the coast for a long time, looking at the deep undulations. On the turbulent sea, paid tribute to the group of people who disappeared in the sea with bronze-colored contemplation. In the sea, the Mongolian brave with a face like iron and eyes like electricity. Scholar. They're going to break through thousands of miles of waves and leap to the sky. The purple sunset outside, in the field of fire that is the source of life. Come on, keep running. Chow Luoming thought like this at the time, and suddenly realized. To split the shackles of the horizon with a sharp sword, and in the infinite. The longing to run free in the universe of the Mongol heroes. Soul. Although the soul is coldly condensed with a hard bloody smell. Breathe, but that beastly haughty soul met with wild style. Free love is the pinnacle of masculine beauty. After bidding farewell to the Indian Ocean coast, Kalaman turned northwest again. Fong embarked on the Afghan plateau. This bare top rock. The plateau looks melancholy and heavy, but the dark blue of the plateau. The night sky is as affectionate and quiet as the eyes of a Muslim girl. When Chow Luoming saw the wolves crouching on the cracked rocks, looking toward the sky. When the new moon uttered its drawn-out howl, he was overwhelmed by the beauty of Islam. Deeply moved. The pale blue crystal crescent seemed to be a pursuit of pure life. That pursuit is a metaphor for the abundance and perfection. Full of hope. However, he felt that it belonged to the purity of the night. The beauty must not fascinate the Mongolian warriors, because the heroic. The soul of Mongolia only pursues the splendid beauty under the golden sun. The hope of abundance and perfection will certainly not be able to intoxicate the Mongolian warriors. The sharp Mongol soul does not appreciate perfection but desires only. The gaze of the beast is fixed on the distant artistic conception after completion and fragmentation. In one summer, Solomons began to roam the European plains. Tour. The boundless wilderness stretches into the distance in the rich green, attracting. The swaying wildflowers are like poetry in full bloom, making the light blue wind also dyed brilliant hues. The lush branches and leaves of the poplar trees send out deep. The long and sad voice seems to be telling melancholy about the past hundreds of years ago. The scene of Mongolian iron cavalry rushing across the field like a herd of leopards. Tide. A milky mist-like sadness filled Luoming's heart. However, that is another kind of melancholy. He is worried that he will never find the Mongolian Gao. The bronze claw marks left by the leopards on the plain are sad. In the season when the leaves turn a peaceful and brilliant golden yellow, the tide. Lemon came to the Danube. That is deep in the smooth sense of rhythm. The undulating waves made his lonely and dry heart surge with an azure dream. He is already laid down by the river, trying to wash his face. However, his hand never reached out to the river. He suddenly couldn't bear to dirty the bright waves, the blue waves. It is so beautiful that people can only touch it with their hearts. At that moment, Chow Luoming did. I believe that hundreds of years ago, the Mongolian warriors must not have had the heart to ride in the waves. Wash off the blood on the sword. Oh, yes, it is pity for beauty that softens Mongolian courage. Sina's stern heart, they couldn't bear to crush this beautiful azure. And on the banks of the Danube hung the bloody blade. Chow Luoming like this. Thinking, go south along the east bank of the Danube. The furthest traces of Kalaman's wanderings are left on the quicksands of the Nile. Superior. The pharaoh's tombs appear on the red-brown desert, like the gigantic vulgarity left in withered, filthy blood, like is the heavy shadow of reason carved on the firmament? Chow Luoming thinks. The rigid square cone of the pyramid is ugly, too devoid of life. The sense of release is too lacking in lush poetry. He felt as if he smelled to the black-gray stench of the mummies enclosed in the pyramids. Although the locals told him that the pharaoh's mummy was smoked with spices. However, the thought of using that dry and rotten fragrance still made him feel sick. Asphyxia. In the windy and dusty view of the pyramids, Chow Luoming understood the Mongolian Iron Cavalry did not step into this desert, but because a distaste for philosophy of life that hides in the gray dust. The pyramid group seems to be a metaphor for the eternal gloomy thirst. Hope is the longing condensed in dry death. And the Mongol warriors. But his heart only seeks to wipe the flowing clouds of the sky with bloodstains blooming like wildflowers. Dyed beautiful red, only pursued to make life in the mad gallop. Broken into the beauty of an instant, only pursue the short-lived dazzled like thunder and lightning. The moment engraved a sharp masculine poem in the blue sky in Mongolia. In the proud and stern squint of the ancient warriors, for the eternal begging, do not. But the petty desires of carrion animals. Weary of leaving Egypt and embarking on the journey back to the east. Afterward, a heavy feeling of confusion filled Chu Luoming's heart. He made. Now, the Mongolian heroic epic is just a blazing legend floating in his soul. Intense dreams without leaving a trace in the world. Now, he has already passed the end of that dream, and the steps of his life are unknown. Where should we go? One evening, he stopped on the Persian plateau. Beside a mountain road, look at the wide and long road leading to the valley below. The slope. The crimson sunset glow falling on the slope seemed to be. It is seeping silently among the dry and cracked rocks. Chow Luoming suddenly felt. Yes, the relics of Mongolian heroic epics are also like the crimson sunset glow. Infiltrating silently into the dry and gray time, disappearing forever. Up. This made Chow Luoming's bewildered heart tremble violently. He produced. There was a crazy impulse. I wanted to hug Ziluo tightly. The orchid-colored sunset wants to keep the beast with a hard male kiss. Bloody crimson sunset. So, like a wolf grabbing its prey, he fanatically clung to a rock on the side of the mountain road, and kissing mesmerizingly on the rocks. The sharp stone edges will soon. His lip was cut, and the blood flowed into the among the sunset glow on the stone. Ha ha, look, that guy must want a woman. Thinking crazy, he's mating with rocks. Looking at him like that, it's like kissing a woman's white butt. Ha ha. Several Arabian horse-drawn caravans stopped on the side of the mountain road. A group of gypsies unloaded their luggage from the car and set up tents for camping. Curtain, laughing unscrupulously. A gypsy girl. Mo stared at Chow Luoming for a moment, then suddenly lifted her skirt and ran to him. Beside him, he leaned his face close to his side and asked, "Who hugs the rock?" "Man, what are you doing?" Her voice was very soft, as light as. Afraid that the voice of questioning would tear up some kind of beautiful expectation. Chow Luoming didn't seem to hear the girl's question at all. He suddenly. Then he raised his head to the sky and let out a long, sad, and mournful howl. A tear as heavy as lead juice oozed from the dry eye. He is. To grieve for the irreparably dimmed sunset. In rupture. On the rocks, he failed to retain the sunset glow, leaving only a few pieces of his blood between his lips. Chow Luoming stood up from the rock, and he found that the gypsy. The girl was still watching him closely. The girl's dark cloud-like long hair blows in the wind. Fluttering excitedly in the air, the blue waves of light flowing through the black hair. Like lightning flashing through a dense rain cloud. "Why are you hugging rocks? Oh, you look like a Mongol," the gypsy girl asked again. Chow Luoming felt. There was a hint of lavender sunset glow in her words. Yes, he said, "I'm kissing the sunset on the rocks." The girl's gaze suddenly trembled, and in the dark eyes. shaking with a charming look. At that moment, Chow Luoming sent. Now, the deep black in the eyes of the gypsy girl is the clearest in the world. Gorgeous mood. However, he suddenly lowered his head, as if fleeing. As if avoiding something, he turned and walked away quickly, wandering in search of traces of Mongolian heroic epics. For more than 10 years, Chow Luoming has encountered the scorching heat of women of different races many times. Gaze. Those exposed white bellies, sexy and fiery prints. Duchesses, fair-haired. Russian girls as bright as the sun, those asses look plump. His full moon, eyes like crystal, and mysterious stars. Lan Mimi has always fascinated Chow Luoming. However, whenever he, thinking of, in ancient years, Mongolian men once wore full. The blood-rusted iron armor sits on a horse shaped like a tiger, with a high. The proud and stern eyes picked up the beauty of the foreign race, and Chow Luoming lost the courage to walk into exotic love affairs. He felt that he, a dusty tramp, was not worthy. Embracing that beautiful sensual flame, if he does, is. The blasphemy of the Mongolian heroic epic is the handsome and beautiful ancient. An insult to the Mongol warriors. That night, Chow Luoming was in a field on the slope beside the mountain road. Overnight in a wild walnut grove. The next morning, he just woke up from his sleep. Open your eyes and see a slender bare foot with a beautiful ankle approaching. Beside his countenance, stained reddish with the sap of wildflowers. The toes are like the color of red leaves that have just fallen. Chow Luoming lay there without moving, but slowly and with difficulty. Looking up. Yesterday the gypsy girl reappeared on his back. Depending on. The girl put her hands on her waist, her red lips fluttered. She smiled amusedly and squinted at him arrogantly. Chow Luoming wants to stand up. Come, however, one of the girl's feet suddenly stepped over his body. Covered his head in her fluttering skirt. Chow Luoming discovered that the girl wore nothing under her skirt, her curvy thighs flashed. The sexy temptation that shines with snow-white plumpness, the lavender shade between the legs. Like a summer thundercloud. Hot, rich breath, with a wild and fiery mood, and there is a fragrance like ambergris that lingers in a temple. Chow Luoming bit his chapped lips tightly, trying his best to restrain his body. Tremor. However, when he saw that in the middle of the lavender pussy, from the cracks like beautiful scars, blue-white flames burst out suddenly. When the liquid was released, Koroman jumped up like a wounded male wolf. Come, throw the gypsy girl down in the weeds. Girl desperately. Struggling, she let out a sharp cry like a female animal, revealing her white and delicate skin. With dense teeth, he fiercely bit Chow Luoming's shoulder. Chow Luoming Chow. Like a mass of burning wind, in the violent whistling sound, the genitals, which seem to be made of hard flames, are deeply inserted into the female body. In the lavender thundercloud between Lang's legs. Girl, stop now. After struggling, the deep black eyes became confused and hazy, as if full of a soft and moist night full of wildflower fragrance. After Chow Luoming finally calmed down, he looked at the girl Snow White. The blood-stained scars on his body were like flowers, and I felt a pang of apology. Meaning. He murmured, I'm sorry, Before Chow Luoming finished speaking, the fullness in the girl's eyes. Her tenderness was suddenly shattered. She cursed angrily and viciously. He said, you hypocritical guy, after doing bad things, come again. And apologize. Then she covered her face with her black hair and wept bitterly. Stand up. Chow Luoming looked at her melancholy, feeling a little nervous for some reason. An unprecedented sorrow. After a while, the girl stopped crying, and she burst into tears. His eyes stared obsessively at the scars on his body for a long time, as if admire the blooming roses in serene joy. Then she, leaning on Chow Luoming's body, he gently licked her just now with the tip of his tongue. The tooth marks left on his shoulders whispered in his ear with a deep chest voice. Say, don't hurt me, you must not apologize. Hug the rock. Such a man should not apologize. For 3 days after that, every morning her people set out. That girl came to Walnut Grove after going to a nearby town for a show. Meet with Chow Luo Ming. However, every time she makes love, she starts. She must struggle violently, and only after being conquered will she break out. Then she became tender, charming, and docile. During these 3 days, Chow Luo Mon grew thinner. That incessant fire of lust seems to burn all the superfluous things in his life, but only a piece of purple. A wasteland where wild winds howl. The girl's fiery and gorgeous passion. The naked body twisted and twisted so that his gaze also changed. So cold and proud, like a leopard staring at the beautiful blood. Gaze. On the morning of the 4th day, the group of gypsies packed their bags and to resume their never-ending journey. The gypsy girl. Lang stood beside the caravan, his face as pale as snow. She puts her arms around. In front of his chest, he squinted at Chow Luo Ming arrogantly, with a malicious look on his lips. With a smile, he said coldly, Mongol man, do you want me? As long as you kiss my feet in front of my people, I will forever follow you. Chow Luo Ming was silent, like a leaden gray cloud in winter. Cloud, looking at the gypsy girl in bewilderment. Don't look at me like a cowardly thief, the girl said impatiently. Frowning his slender eyebrows, he raised his voice and said angrily. However, her voice trembled like a golden leaf in the cold wind. Film, if you want me, kiss my feet, kiss me loudly. Come, let the rock you hugged here. Chow Luo Ming was irritated, he slowly clenched his fists, thinking. He punched the corner of the girl's mouth with a contemptuous smile. Lucky. The bossy girl quickly squinted at Chow Luo Ming's raised fist. Glance. A look of fear flitted across her face, but more like anxiety. Looking forward to it. At the moment when the fist was about to strike, Chow Luo Ming suddenly felt. In the eyes of the psychic girl, she saw the shadow of a hobo with a gray face and disheveled clothes. He thinks. The girl's blazing eyes are like beautiful black flames, burning. Looking at his figure, the figure of the vagabond. Unbearable for a while. Feeling ashamed, Chow Luo Ming loosened his clenched fist feebly. Oh, I am not angry with her, that beautiful black flame should. It should be a sacrifice to the noble and handsome Mongolian warrior, and I only is a bum. Chow Luo Ming thought painfully, silently. He lowered his head, then fell to his knees in the dust. He watched that. The beautiful bare feet that only protrude from under the girl's long skirt and dyed pink. Dark-colored toes, eyes trembling with confusion and sadness. He slowly bend your tightly closed lips towards the girl's feet. He found that the foot convulsed violently as if about to retract, but in the end, he didn't move, but his toes felt like they were stepping on the ice, tightly shrinking together. The moment his lips touched the girl's instep, suddenly, Chow Luo Ming's heart felt like being bitten by a poisonous snake. Pain. At the same time, he felt that there was something beautiful in this kiss. Irreparably broken. When Chow Luo Ming raised his head again, he saw light blue. Tears were streaming down the pale cheeks of the gypsy girl. Her eyes became like wind-eroded black rocks, devoid of any. There is only a broken and desolate beauty in his expression. There are no more men, the Mongols are not really men, murmured the gypsy girl feebly, her voice. It was as lonely as a lonely footprint on the vast snow field. Finished speaking. She turned around and walked away along the rugged mountain road. Straight. Seeing that her figure was covered by the flying dust, she did not turn to Chow Luo Ming. Review once. Chow Luo Ming knelt beside the mountain road for a long time, his gloomy heart wandering. looking at the beautiful bare feet of the gypsy girl on the dusty mountain road. Distant sound. After an unknown amount of time, Chow Luoming heard someone talking to. He said, "Get up, Mongol man. Come to me, she. Not coming back, you broke her heart." Chow Luoming stood up slowly and saw a gray-haired Mrs. Busey. Her withered body was covered with a thread of worn black ash-colored shawl, sitting on a stone beside the mountain path. Chow Luoming walked numbly. He went to the old woman and sat down. "You broke her heart, you know, you shouldn't have kissed her feet. If then you beat her hard and whipped her, she'll crawl on the ground and lick the ashes of your boots like a bitch. Soil, I will follow you all my life, the gypsy wife." The child's dim and dry eyes looked at the swaying wormwood on the distant hills. Grass, her voice was like the haggard wormwood drifting over the gray-white wormwood. Haggard wind, we gypsy women wander about, just to. Looking for a strong man, looking for a man who is as proud as a beast, looking for. Find a man as hard as a rock cracked in the sun only. I hope to be loved by such a man, even if only once. But we. His eyes will only grow dry in hope. Hey, like that. Men only existed in the old days, now men are not. It can make people emotional. Gentlemen are as polite as castrated. Horses, who are cast into a hard life by fate, and like horses in a hole. Rat-like and cowardly. Yes, you broke her heart. Last night, she didn't sleep all night and kept saying to me, I'll surely snatch her like a horse robber and put her on the horse's back. Bring back your homeland, for you are the man who hugs the rock, yes. Mongol. Oh, and she said there was a world among the Mongols. The most ferocious bandit in the world called Genghis Khan, that's what he did. Of the gossips with sabers about beauties, but you kneel down. I kissed her feet. When I was young, I, too, loved her. Believe that your love is like a drifting cloud in the color of a rose, and you will be able to. Enough to find a man like a steep mountain. I am willing to be attached. The rocks surrounding the top of the mountain. However, the world has no value. Gotta be attached to the mountain. I'm old and can't walk anymore. Rose has. After withering, I will neutralize the rocks in the dry weeds like a gray fog. Shurjian disappeared. But she still has to travel all over the world to find her. A cliff where beautiful flowing clouds live. However, she will be disappointed. Yes, will disappear in the haggard like me, in the haggard of the heart. Disappear. The old gypsy woman's voice was getting weaker and fainter. Dirty tears hung on her sharp, eagle-beaked nose as if frozen. End. The next day, Chow Luoming left the old gypsy woman like a wisp of withered gray wind drifts eastward. All his life. Desire seems to be wildfire by that gypsy scarlet erotic. Scorched, leaving only a corpse-like pale void in the mind. Feel. A year later, when he came to the Buddha under the snow peak of the Himalayas again. In front of the tower, he has become an old beggar. He lifted. The hollow-cheeked face, covered with a dirty gray beard, gazed at. Looking at the beautiful pagoda, I felt the first time I saw the scenery under the snow peak. The temptation of the whiteness of the pagoda. However, unlike the youth. Yes, before he wanted to escape this temptation, and now is dry. But the soul wants to cling to this pure white temptation, wanting to be in that pure whiteness. Find a peaceful home in pure white. So he walked into the Buddha temple, turned into a monk. 10 years later, Chow Luoming, wearing a reddish-brown monk's robe, left. I opened a temple on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau and walked to my hometown. 16. At the age of 1, he was full of eagerness to find the remains of Mongolian heroic epics. To the world, more than 20 years later, he only took a lonely wilderness. Liang's soul returned to the Mongolian plateau. After returning to his hometown, Chow Luoming lived in the silver village by the Ergun River. Both summoned the temple to continue to study Buddhism. as early as the time when Chao Luoming was born. One year, the living Buddha in the temple called Ingbo passed away. However, the reincarnation of the living Buddha has not been found for many years. Chao Luoming Lai. After arriving at Ingbo, several masters have successively obtained it in different ways. Received the divine revelation, Chao Luoming is the reincarnation of the living Buddha. That's it. In this way, he was regarded as the living Buddha of the temple called Jimbo. However, I don't have a clear recollection of my previous life and occasionally use meditation to cross over the boundary of life. When looking back on his past life, he can only see a twilight fog barrier. Chao Luoming was very concerned about the theory of reincarnation and hell in Buddhism. Doctrine, as well as tedious religious ceremonies, are not interesting. Only pure emptiness is the truth of life, deeply attracted by Buddhist philosophy. Over him, he wanted to do it in a Zen way, a kind of meditation through thoughtlessness. The way of spiritual practice, so that the soul into the white emptiness. Amid the emptiness, desire and pain are like red leaves. The ground is drifting. Chao Luoming chose a mountain by the Silver Ergun River Gang as his spiritual training place. He is long almost every day, sitting cross-legged among the purple-red rocks on the hill, facing the vast feather grass, for thoughtless meditation, trying to transcend life. The touch of life makes the soul merge with the vast wilderness. For some time, whenever Chao Luoming felt that the kind of separation between the soul and nature, Kai's sense of life is about to shatter silently, and his soul is about to. Whenever he drifts across the wasteland, he will have a strong turmoil. Feel. Sometimes, from the deepest part of his being, suddenly a mass of beautiful black flames, and eyes as deep as a gypsy's. And a flame is blazing his eyes, burning a vagabond with a dusty face. The figure of the Han. The passionate love, like a majestic and high cliff, looms in the sky. Clouds and the afterglow of the setting sun coated the bronze-colored cliff with layers of brilliant, dignified gold. Day after day, year after year, the black flame gradually becomes turned into a gray mist, and the golden cliffs in the clouds were like dry. The yellow leaves are also broken. After the emotions withered completely, Chao Luoming finally. You can make the mind enter a peaceful emptiness during meditation. However, what disturbed him was that the mood of emptiness presented a sad and desolate feeling. Light gray. No matter how hard he tried, he could not erase the sadness with meditation. Cool tones make the mood of emptiness pure white. One summer evening when he was 55 years old, Chao Luoming seemed to be sitting on a hill and meditating as usual. On the Silver Ergun River, rapidly tumbling purple-black thunderclouds surged among the swimming waves. Blown by the violent gust of wind, the thunderstorm cloud clings to the tops of the grass and spreads quickly across the wasteland. Among the purple-black clouds, streaks of golden red suddenly moved. The lightning is like a long snake, the thunder like a burst seems to be the savage sky. Hissing in grief and indignation in the wildness of Jinglan, the torrential rain of Jinglan is like a dazzling knife. Light sweeps across the wilderness. In the storm, Chao Luoming felt that the soul was separated from nature. His sense of life was suddenly shattered by the sharp lightning strike, and vast, white tranquility spreads out in the soul. It is not. The flickering thunder and lightning are reflected into reddish grass waves, rushing in the strong wind. Rapid ups and downs, pouring into his heart from the rainy and misty sky, immediately dissolved in the boundless white silence for a moment. That moment, the tide. Luoming knew that he had finally entered the pure white emptiness, entered the Buddha. Learned the final conception of the philosophy of life. Oh, so that nothingness is clean as the feathers of a white dove lies in my heart. The world dissolves in the heart, and the heart dissolves in nothing. Middle. In the past, I always wanted to integrate the soul into nature beyond life, so. Therefore, even if one realizes tranquility, that tranquility cannot but be desolate. The light gray of the soul drifts there, leaving behind many emotional relics. How can it not be sad in the wilderness? At that time, Chao Luoming Duan, sitting on a hill reflected pale gold by lightning, sitting on a silver. In the torrential rain, I thought about it this way. A ray emerges from the dry face. A serene smile, that smile is as moving as blooming in the ancient hanging. White wild almond blossoms on the edge of the cliff. In the autumn of that year, it was also dusk, and Chao Luoming was on the forehead. After bathing in the silver rapids of the Arjuna River, slowly walk up the hill. Facing the huge sun sphere that was sinking, he sit down on your knees and enter into thoughtless meditation. He's going to be here for the last time. In this meditation, bid farewell to life. Because he has realized the Buddha. Learn the true meaning of the philosophy of life in the lush leaves of emotion. In the pure emptiness presented after falling, life becomes the rest. That pure emptiness is a piece of earth that will not leave life behind. Tranquil snowfield of the trail. When the crimson heliosphere becomes blurred in Chao Luoming's gradually hazy field of vision. Pale, when his touch of life is about to be milky. The moment when the fog drifts away, when the slow beating of his heart is like. The moment the distant lonely footsteps are about to disappear, a sudden rush. The sound of gunfire drew red wounds in the distant, white silence. Mark. Immediately, the scenery of the wilderness reappeared in Chao Luo with eye-catching colors. Emerged in Meng's field of vision. He saw that the red-eared sage. Under the swaying and undulating horizon, a black panther-like Mongolian horse jumped out. Ancient horse, a young girl leaning down on a galloping horse, silver. The black skirt swirls like snow and mist in a strong wind, and the fluttering black hair. Like the burning night, her chest seemed to hold golden sunshine. Immediately afterward, Chao Luoming discovered that a team wearing Zhang's Wolines. Troops of gray-uniformed cavalry, like a pack of wolves, and the female. Lang followed behind. In the wild run, the girl quickly approached the Ergun River. The steep shore. Chao Luoming also saw her face. Girl, that shimmering. Ying's long and beautiful eyes are like the silver torrent of the Ergun River. Her beautiful lips are as delicate as poppies in full bloom. Her chest tight. The son in his arms turned out to be a young man in a golden Mongolian robe. In the year, the bright red blood on the chest of the young man seemed to be a bright sun. Masculine poetry emerges from the light. The girl had just jumped onto the steep bank of the Ergun River on her horse, and she was shocked again. There was a burst of gunshots, and a splash of gorgeous light suddenly burst from her shoulders. The charming blood mist, the body of the young man hugging her chest, immediately burst from. She fell from her arms, which were hanging limply like a broken flower branch. That. A girl jumped off the galloping horse, trying to help the young man back up. On horseback, however, her injured arm couldn't be hugged no matter what. A youthful body as heavy as a rock. So she tried her best. Help the young man up, make his upright body lean against a poplar. Tree silver trunk. The girl's silver torrent-like long eyes turned contemptuously to the back and scanned the group of approaching soldiers. The soldiers were screaming to kill her with her husband's head. Reward. The maiden proudly turned back to her pale and fair countenance. Pulled out a sharp Mongolian dagger from his waist. Her beautiful eyes. Crazy grief was shaking in his heart. Looking straight into the young man's eyes, he suddenly stabbed the Mongolian short knife into the young man's steep neck and began to force. Cut up. A mountain spring of blood gushed out from the young man's neck, and immediately it was shattered into a scarlet blood mist in the gray-blue gust. Just in green. The moment Yan's head was about to be cut off, his gaze suddenly turned to Chao Luoming. Through the scarlet blood mist, Chao Luoming saw The youth's eyes were purple like the setting sun, and those eyes were deep. There's a ray of crazy and heroic sentiment shining everywhere, just like engraved on the purple. A sharp thunderbolt on the blue sunset, a light blue wound. Mark. Chow Luoming felt that the momentary staring at each other seemed to be worse than 1,000 years. Too long. The pure and white emptiness in his soul was captured by the wild and wildness in the youth's eyes split open, and from the crack, the blood of the dark red beast gushed out from the crack. Chow Luoming was especially shocked. What's more, the sharp gaze of the young man seemed to scatter a strong. The bloody exhortation was deeply engraved on his desolate heart. And, for some reason, Chow Luoming felt that if the purple sunset, if the scars on his body cannot heal, he will not be able to erase the moment that was engraved on his heart. Entrustment. The beautiful girl finally cut off the young man's head. Lifting his face, he held up his black hair like the long mane of a fierce horse with both hands. The flying, bronze-colored head, with the posture of drinking wine. Attitude, with chapped red lips to indulge in kissing the young man who is still blazing. Looking at the eyes. Then she clasped her lover's head to her breast. Before jumping on the horseback, the long silver skirt fluttered frantically, and the horse jumped into the waves of the Ergun River. At that moment, Chow Luoming discovered that the purple heliosphere was bathed in the silver torrent of the Ergun River, above the setting sun. A blue flash suddenly flew down from the majestic top of the dark clouds. Electricity, passing vertically from the middle of the heliosphere, is like a sharp spot carved on the setting sun. Leaves scars. After Zhang Zuolin's cavalry retreated, Chow Luoming struggled. Stand up and walk slowly to the lonely poplar tree. That green. The headless body of the year is still standing against the poplar tree. Chow Luoming Jiao. Contemplating for a long time on the broad shoulders of the headless body, on the cliff-like. His chest, that thin waist as strong as a wild wolf, that piercing stem like an iron pillar. The legs between the cracked rocks are like golden sunlight in the evening wind. The robes of the fluttering Mongolian robes. Chow Luoming felt that the young man was staring at him before his head was cut off. His gaze has already united his soul with a pathetic and steadfast destiny. Luck is connected, if you don't find the bloody smell. Fate, without fulfilling that scarlet testament, will never be able to melt into the pure, white nothingness of Buddhism. That autumn, the vast and sad melody of the Song of Gadameron. Law, with the gray-blue wings of the geese flying over the desolate grassland. Stand up. From the legends of the shepherds, Chu Luoming knew that the young man's name is Gada, and the girl is Gada's beautiful wife. Zimu Dan Chow Luoming discovered that the blood of the young men and women was falling. In the place where I passed by, 2 wild lilies are blooming vigorously in the autumn wind. Opened. One is bright red, like a beast offering sacrifices to the setting sun. The color of blood, the other was silvery white but on the petals. There is a ray of red, like a ray of beauty falling on the silver waves. Love affair. Since then, the 2 wild lilies have been blooming every autumn. The cliffs of the Ergun River are in full bloom, and during the short flowering period, the tide. Lemon would always sit day and night among the rocks on the steep bank and think. He thinks. To figure out the mystery of the lightning wreck engraved on his heart. What does it mean? However, there has been no result. Those 2 wild lilies seem to be on a date with Tide Laman every year. It will be in full bloom in autumn, although the flowering period is only a few days, but the flower posture is beautiful and moving, and this situation has lasted for more than 10 years. However, in the autumn of 22 years ago, the 2 wild lilies just bloomed. Let go, a lone swan goose landed on the cliffs of the Ergun River. He picked off the white lily, held it between his long beaks, and flew to the cloudy and misty place. South. The next day, the red lily also died, not withered. 0. but like a flame dried by the wind, dying in crimson. Up. The wild lily has never bloomed since then. Chow Luoming knew that according to the Buddhist theory of reincarnation, the wild lily must have been reincarnated into another life form. Chow Luoming is not a red lily. Sad, because the flame of the red lily is extinguished in the desolate steppe. On the road, his soul must still be wandering in the hometown of his love. Bye-bye. The fate of the marriage made Chow Luoming worry. He didn't know that the geese were killed by the wild goose. Will the snow-white soul brought to the far south return to bronze colored Inner Mongolia Plateau to find the reincarnated life of wild lily's soul, to unravel the mystery? Puzzled by the will, Chow Luoming left the Ergun River. 20 years later, Chow Luoming traveled all over the grasslands in the north and south of the Yinshan Mountains, but only finding more and more disappointment at this moment, Chow Luoming's weakened body. The body stands in the Gaoshan Zhao Temple in the northern suburb of Ho Hot, and the relics call for. On the edge of the cliff in front of the pagoda, I felt a burst of confusion. It's difficult. I know that my soul will turn into a wisp of haggard wind, forever in the wilderness, floating with the sad howling of wild wolves.